Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, very good evening and warm welcome to each one of you on further continuing this journey of 9 processes of devotional service. And today we will be taking up Atma Nivedanam. And the title what we have chosen for today's class is the real independence. So we by nature, we want to be independent. We need our space and we want to be respected for our independence. So today, in today's session, we will understand what is this real independence. So today's session has been divided in 3 portions. As you can see, one is the symptom of Atma Nivedanam. Second is the degree of surrender. And third, as we have always been taking, so we will pick up some life examples from scriptures to understand how can we do this Atma Nivedanam or surrender. So going further here, a living entity is so made by the will of the Almighty that he is most happy when placing himself in a condition of absolute dependence. So this is from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, 9th chapter, verse number 22. This is a very, very important instruction which is being imparted to us and we need to understand in its totality. All of us want to be happy, and that is why we keep trying different things in life. That is why we have joined this course. That is why we did Gita Made Easy. Why? Because we want to be happy. And here it is mentioned that we can be most happy while placing himself in a condition of absolute dependence. So when we take complete shelter of the Supreme Lord, when we declare that, oh my dear Krishna, I am completely dependent on you, from there arises our real independence, and from that thought comes the maximum happiness which we can ever think of. So this is what is the instruction of Bhagavatam. And now getting into the symptoms. So here in front of you we have a beautiful verse. Anukulasya sankalpaha pratikulasya varjanam rakshishyatiti vishvaso goptritve varnam tatha atmanikshepa karpanye shadvidha sharanagatihi. So Sharanagati means taking complete shelter or Atma Nivedanam or completely depending on the Supreme Lord. So the last line says Shadvidha Sharanagatihi. So these are the 6 divisions, 6 types in which we can declare our surrender. So these 6 things we will read the translation. So these 6 divisions of surrender are: 1. Accepting those things favorable to devotional service. 2. Rejecting unfavorable things. 3. The conviction that Krishna will give protection. 4. Accepting the Lord as one's guardian or master. 5th, full surrender. And 6th is humility. So I invite all of you to let's explore what these symptoms, how can we translate it in our day-to-day life, what does it mean? So the first one on your screen you see is accepting those things favorable or anukulasya sankalpa. So we take a sankalpa, we take a vow, we become very, very determined to accept all those things which are favorable for our devotional service. So what are those things? Few of them I have listed down there. Like the most important is chanting, and that is why you would remember that in GME session almost all the sessions we have mentioned about chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So chanting is the essence. So chanting is one thing, and I am quite sure that by now all of you have accepted chanting also, because I keep receiving mails at how your lives have been transformed and how you have been regularly chanting a fixed number of rounds. So that is one of the favorable things. So chanting, attending classes like how you are doing now, reading Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, associating with devotees, which means discussing with devotees all type of problems, any problems if we have in our life, not necessarily spiritual, but otherwise also some emotional turbulence is there, some difficult decision making is there. So we take help of the devotees because they give us the instruction or guidance in alliance with the scriptures. So association of devotees, offering Naivedyam to the Supreme Lord, offering Arati, temple visits, and Harinam Kirtan. So these are some of the things which I have listed. The list is quite long. So doing things which are favorable. And second is rejecting unfavorable things, or pratikulasya varjanam. Varjanam means stopping or rejecting. So we do the things which are favorable for my spiritual life, and I also take an effort not to do things which are unfavorable for my spiritual life. So here we have mentioned some of the things, like too much of television. It is a distraction. So too much of television, too much social media, spending a lot of time on social media, again it becomes distraction. Non-vegetarian food, because we have discussed at length about it as how it is tamasic by nature. So spiritual progress may be difficult if we are consuming the non-vegetarian food. Intoxicants. In ISKCON we go to like the extent of even giving up tea and coffee, because that is also considered to be mildly intoxicating. But as of now, all of you, I can request you to broadly give up like things like liquor and drug abuse and other things which are like highly intoxicating in nature. Illicit sex, gambling, activities which drag us away from Krishna consciousness. So anything which distracts us, which takes us away from Krishna consciousness, so all those activities have to be given up. So pratikulasya varjanam. Moving to the third one. So third one is the devotees of the Lord have this absolute faith. Krishna will always protect. Rakshishyatiti vishwaso. This vishwas, drid vishwas or conviction is there that my Lord will always protect me irrespective of what situation I am in. So I have here put up few pictures of some of the pastimes of Krishna where he has actually gone completely out of the way just to protect the devotees. So the first one we see there is Krishna is running with a chakra and he is attacking Bhishma Dev. So here we remember this pastime, that how Krishna had taken a vow that he would not lift a weapon during the Mahabharat war. So he had taken a vow that he would not lift the weapon, and yet the situation was like Arjun was almost about to be killed by Bhishma. So Bhishma Dev had attacked Arjun because on the previous night he had taken a vow that he would fight to his full capacity, as Duryodhan was doubting his intentions. So anyway, so though Krishna had taken that vow, yet to protect his devotee Arjun, he actually takes the wheel of the chariot and he rushes towards Bhishma Dev. He attacks Bhishma. So now with this one thing, Krishna is saving two of his devotees. So one was Arjun, which is apparently visible to all of us, and second is Bhishma Dev. So Bhishma Dev himself is one of the Mahajans, and because Duryodhan has doubted his intentions, so he was going and he was telling that I'll go full swing and I will do something extraordinary today in the battlefield. So he had taken that vow. So to keep his promise, to keep the promise of Bhishma intact, and to save the life of his devotee Arjuna, Krishna did not care for his own promise. So though Krishna had made that promise that he would not lift the weapon, and yet he lifted the weapon. So this is one way we see how Krishna protects his devotee. Going to the next story, there you see the picture there at the corner. So that is the Govardhan Leela. So how Krishna lifts the entire mountain and gave protection to all the cowherd men, women and animals of Vrindavan consecutively for 7 days and 7 nights without even blinking, without even like losing the mountain even for a while, without eating, continuously standing there and protecting his devotees. The third one is a picture of Draupadi being disrobed, and in the last session, I'm sure all of us remember those intense moments as what all Draupadi was going through, and we saw that by the will of Providence, somehow, though she had all these Maharathis as her husbands, and yet not even one of her husband could come to the rescue. Actually, the entire assembly, nobody could rescue her. She was in a completely hopeless situation, and when she calls out for Krishna, and Krishna immediately comes and reciprocates with her desire, and he completely protects Draupadi. So though people were present there, and yet nobody could do anything, and Krishna, though he was not there, and yet one call by his devotee and he comes running there to protect his devotee. So that is another example of Krishna giving protection. Then the fourth picture what we see there is of Gajendra. So we all remember that also we discussed in one of the sessions, that how Gajendra was not even in a human body, he was in the body of an elephant, and how he was in a miserable condition where he was fighting with this crocodile for many days together, and how Gajendra was losing all his strength, and in that hopeless situation he just catches hold of one lotus flower and he offers to Krishna, and he offers his prayers there, which we remember as Gajendra Moksha, and how the Supreme Lord comes and protects Gajendra. And the fifth one, the picture what we see there is Lord Ramchandra. And this is very interesting event which is being depicted in this picture. Vibhishan comes there. So Vibhishan, younger brother of Ravan, he tried to convince Ravan to all his capacity. He wanted to convince Ravan, but Ravan was not getting convinced. And then finally Vibhishan leaves Ravan and comes to take shelter of Lord Ramchandra. So in that situation when he comes, actually at that time Rama is surrounded by the entire monkey army, and not even one soul, not even one person was in favor of accepting Vibhishan, because everybody, practically everyone there on the field was doubting Vibhishan's intention. And Vibhishan had come and Vibhishan was saying that, my dear Rama, I surrender to you, please accept me. So that time it is mentioned in Ramayana in Yuddha Kand 18th chapter 33 verse, where Rama says that most amazingly hope-giving verse, where Rama says that if anyone comes to me and once says, my dear Lord, I am yours, I am taking shelter at your lotus feet, I promise for all time to come that I will never leave him. And there he goes further, and there is a mention that even Ravan personally comes and he says that, my dear Ram, I take shelter of you, I will forgive him. So that is how the magnanimity of the Supreme Lord is. That is how his heart is. So that is how we need to have that conviction that Krishna will always protect. So this is the third symptom of surrender. Going to the fourth one, accepting the Lord as one's master. Goptritve varnam tatha. So my dear Lord, as a souled animal has no need to think about his maintenance and sustenance. So because I have given up my body and soul unto you, I am no longer concerned with my maintenance and sustenance. So that is the attitude of a devotee. So like if we have any pet, so we know that the pet is completely dependent on the master. The pet does not worry. Like there are so many stray dogs, and then there is a pet dog, and the stray dog, he actually keeps wandering from one street to the next street just for in search of some food and some shelter. But the pet dog, what the pet dog has to worry about? So those of you who have pets would know that it is completely your responsibility. Even taking them for a morning walk or stroll, or if you are traveling out of station, then seeing to it that somebody else is there to take care of your pet. So the pet is completely dependent on the master. Pet does not make any request, but the master, understanding the needs, completely fulfills all the requirement. So similarly here it is mentioned in Hari Bhakti Vivek, and it is quoted in Nectar of Devotion, as how the devotee of the Lord has this feeling that Krishna is my complete shelter, that Krishna nourishes me, that Krishna will protect me, that Krishna is there, so I need not fear. So no separate planning from Krishna's plan, and complete dependence on the Supreme Lord. So that is the fourth quality. Proceeding further, fifth one is humility. Atma Nikshep Karpanya. So humility and complete surrender. So now this humility refers to 4 significant points. Actually, there is a beautiful verse by Sriman Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Lord Chaitanya himself composed this verse. Trinadapi shuni chena taroriva sahishnuna amani na manadena kirtaneya sadahari. So this is the definition verse of humility, and that shows humility refers here to thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. So just like when we are walking, we don't really notice that there are so many trina, like insignificant straws all over. That is humility, that we consider ourselves as insignificant as the straw in the street and more tolerant than the tree. So when we talk about straw in the street, or when we talk about the grass, let's take example of the grass to understand this humble nature. So when we walk on the grass actually bends, and grass gives us nice padded cushion under our feet also. If we walk on thorn, then we would realize the value of grass. So grass is so insignificant, it is offering that, and we are just like crumbling the grass. We are walking over, literally walking over, and yet it is offering that cushion. So that is humility, thinking oneself lower than that grass also, that even if other person is walking over me, that is also fine because Krishna is my maintainer. Second is more tolerant than the tree. So now the tree is so very tolerant, irrespective of the climate, what is there outside. It is hot sun, it is raining, whatever is there, tree offers some facility to each one of us. So during the hot sun, tree gives shade. During monsoon time, again tree gives shade. Tree gives all its various parts for the consumption, for our usage. So right from the trunk to the leaves to the fruits to the flowers, everything we utilize. So more tolerant than a tree. Even when the tree dies, we cut it off and we use it either for making some furniture or for paper or for so many other purposes. So that is the tolerance level a devotee exhibits. Then third is devoid of all sense of false prestige. So what is this false prestige? This false prestige arises when we connect ourselves to being the body. So till the time I think that I am this body, I have this designation, I am, let's say, a chartered accountant, or I am a doctor, or I am whatever. So from there I get so much of proud. So devoid of all sense of false prestige, because I understand that I am not the body. So when I come to that platform, that Jivera Swarup Hoy Krishnera Nityadas, when I am at that platform, then I don't think that I am senior to somebody or better than somebody. Then this natural humility comes in us. And the fourth one is ready to offer all respect to others. Because if I am servant of Krishna, so in that sense I become everybody's servant, because I want to please my master, and in that spirit I work. So that is true humility. And the sixth symptom is full surrender. Atma Nikshep Karpanya. So full surrender, now that means offering Krishna everything, including one's body, mind, intelligence, and whatever one may possess. So all the possessions, my own body is for Krishna's service, my mind I try to engage in Krishna's service, my intelligence, through my intelligence I try to serve whatever ways and means are there to serve Krishna. So this is known as full surrender, where I do not have any personal interest. All my interests are centered around serving Krishna. So that should be the ideal consciousness. Krishna has blessed me with any talent. Now how can I utilize that talent in the service of the Lord? Like last class, after my last class, I got a couple of mails from Bhargavi and from few others who have automatically volunteered that they would like to do some sketching and drawing work for our classes. So what are they doing is they have identified that they have been blessed with a talent and they want to utilize it in the service of the Lord. So this is how everything, whatever I have, like some of you sitting there, maybe expert in Facebook. We are actually looking for somebody who can help us in handling our Facebook account, or somebody there is an expert in managing the websites. So like that, there are so many ways and means in which we can actually streamline our talents in the service of the Supreme Lord. So that is full surrender, when whatever I possess, I utilize in the service of the Supreme. And the second part is remembering that one's activities and desires are not independent. So I declare my complete dependence on the Supreme Lord. So these are the 6 symptoms of surrender. And then going further, let's talk about degrees of surrender. So each one of us, we have different degrees. So like when it comes to accepting something favorable and rejecting unfavorable thing, so some of us have started chanting 1 round of Hare Krishna Mahamantra, some of us have started chanting 4 rounds of Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So the degrees vary. Some of us have decided ki okay, whatever classes are there I would attend. Some of you have decided okay, at least once in a week I'll attend. So again, degrees is varying. So these degrees, how these degrees vary? Because of 2 things. So the first thing is alignment with the mood. So to understand this, I'll give you one example. I'm sure all of you are sitting in a room with a fan, right? So now when the fan is turned on, sometime we notice that the regulator and the fan, there is actually no connection. You try to do the regulator, you are trying to turn the knob, but it does not really vary the speed of the regulator. It is completely disconnected. Sometimes we see that we press it hard and it is working, and then slightly loosen and then it stops working again. And then we press it hard again and then it starts working. So sometimes we have to hold it or paste it somehow that it continues working. And for some of us, you just fix the regulator and you forget it. It continues working. So similarly, these degree of surrender, now how do we translate it here? So sometimes, so when we talk about alignment with the mood, so now we are referring to the mood of the Supreme Lord and the mood of Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. So how many times am I aligning myself with that mood and mission? So the first category is disconnected, which means I attend some classes here and there, but I have not yet started chanting. I enjoy, though I like the classes, but then I don't really want to make some changes in my lifestyle. So that is, it's like a fan and the regulator which is disconnected. The second is constant pressing. So when I hear class, I become very enthusiastic and I think, yes, I'll do. And then the class gets over and then I just phase out till the next class. So that is constant pressing is required to align with the mood. And the third one is turn and forget it. So many of you have just taken the sankalpa on the day when we completed GME, and from that day onwards, sincerely, you are chanting 1 round of Hare Krishna Mahamantra at least, right? So how much I am willing to align myself to this mood of Bhagavad Gita? Okay, fine, I have understood Bhagavad Gita or I have attended some courses on Bhagavad Gita. How is it transforming my life? How is it getting translated in action plan? Because devotional service, we said, is activity. So how much willing I am to do some activity around that? So that is alignment with the mood. And the second part is center of the orbit. So degree of surrender depends where my life is centered around. So I'm sure you know that the center of orbit is like something is in the center and then we go round and round around the periphery. So for children, it is generally said that their life is centered around playing and around with their friends. So they want to spend lots of time with their friends, and that is the center of their living. For youth, for young age, when we enter into teenage, starting right from teenage until the time we are, say, 25, 28, the life revolves around opposite sex. We derive maximum pleasure in those activities. For old people, the concern for health, right? The doctors and all become the center of their existence, because They need to be healthy. So that becomes the center. For materialistic people who have lot of desires, so these desires are their center. Their life revolves around their desires. So how can I get such a such car? How can I get this latest iPhone? How can I get this bungalow? How can I plan my foreign trip? So what is happening around the desires? And for devotees of the Lord, actually, Krishna is in the center. So is it true for us? Am I becoming a devotee? Is my life revolving around Krishna and his devotees and his Bhagavad Gita and his instructions? So the more we revolve around Krishna, the more we get in that orbit, making Krishna the center, the more we are surrendering. So here we have covered the symptoms of surrender or Atmanivedanam and the degrees of surrender. And to understand this completely, now we will enter into the life example, the real life example. So to begin with, we have taken we'll be discussing two examples today at length. So first one is of this wonderful, extraordinary creature in Mahabharata. He is a huge vulture, in Ramayana. He's a huge vulture and his name is Jatayu. So we all would know certain aspect of this story. So I would just cover the lessons and how actually Jatayu takes complete surrender. What was his mood? So now we all understand that how Sita was being kidnapped by Ravan. So when Sita was kidnapped and Ravan took her into his plane, like he had this aerial plane, flying plane. So he takes Sita there and he is flying high in the sky. So when he is flying high in the sky and down there is this whole jungle spread out, wide jungle is there. And Sita figures out somebody down there and Sita Devi starts screaming from the top of that plane. She calls out, Jatayu, Jatayu. She sees actually this huge bird there and she starts calling him out and she says, could you please pass on this message to my husband? He would be searching me all over. When you see him, could you please pass on this message that I have been kidnapped by Ravana? So this was Sita's only request, that she was requesting Jatayu to pass on this message to Ramchandra that she has been kidnapped by Ravan. And Jatayu is a very old bird, a huge vulture but very old. In fact, it is said that Jatayu was friend of Dashrath. So he is of that age bracket. So he was sitting down there, very old vulture bird, and he starts figuring out what is happening. So gradually he opens his eyes and he sees that Mother Sita is flying and somebody is actually holding her tight and they are going somewhere. So Jatayu starts thinking and Jatayu realizes that that person is Ravan, and Jatayu is well aware of Ravana's strength. So because he is aware of Ravana's strength, this conflict starts going on in his mind. What should I do? What should I do? I am no match for Ravana. He is super powerful. So I may not be able to protect Sita even if I desire to protect. And then he also thinks that anyway Mother Sita is asking me only to pass on the message. So she is also not expecting me to go and fight. So I am not really required to go and fight there. So he starts thinking that, and then suddenly he starts thinking of his brother Sampath, and this voice comes to his mind, his brother's voice, that one should not live a life for his own personal enjoyment. A life becomes meaningful when it is sacrificed for others' pleasure. So thinking like that, so two things are going on simultaneously, and he was weighing the pros and cons, and finally he takes a call and he decides that even if I am no match for Ravan, probably what I can do is I can delay him, and there is a likelihood that Ram and Lakshman would come here searching for Sita. So if I can just stop them for some time, and that would give time to Ram and Lakshman to come and combat. So I am not qualified to handle Ravan, but Ram and Lakshman are. So let me put in my effort and let me try. So thinking like that, he started flapping his wings and he started rising up in the air. Till this time, Ravan was not aware that there is such a vulture bird there. Of course, he heard Sita saying something, but he could not comprehend whom she is talking to and to what significance this whole thing is. So when he called out, and then suddenly there were very, very strong wind started flowing, and his flying chariot started shaking because of that wind. And Ravan was thinking that probably at such a height, because he was flying at a very great altitude, so he thought at such height it is a common phenomena and I need not worry. But the flapping of the wings of Jatayu caused actually a mini tornado. And then Ravan figured out that from where this breeze is coming. So he started looking in that direction and he found that there was this huge gigantic bird who was covered with dark brown feathers which were closely knit, and he had these yellow mean eyes, like fiercely powerful glare these eyes were giving him as if it was emanating fire. And this bird had this red beak, very, very sharp and shiny, and he was approaching Ravan to attack him. And the first attack, and it was very intense, and this bird was very intense with red claws, and he was looking so brutal. For a moment Ravan was scared, because what is it that is coming? So Ravan was scared of this bird when he saw this bird approaching. But then Ravan realized one thing which gave him solace. Ravan realized the age of that bird. And Ravan thought that I can easily handle him, because though he looks so mighty, he looks so virtuous, he must have the power of thousands of elephants together, yet because he is very old, so I can handle him. And Ravan was thinking like that, and that was the time when Jatayu actually landed on the umbrella of the chariot. So Jatayu landed there, and Ravan started thinking, Ravan was scared, and Jatayu started thinking, and Jatayu started saying that as long as I am around, I won't allow your evil schemes to succeed. I will block every direction you can possibly think of going towards. And then Jatayu looked with lot of love towards Sita, and his anger immediately converted into love and soft, affectionate glance he gave to Sita, and he said, Sita, you don't have to worry. Now I have come. And then he started a conversation with Ravan. And Ravan was also intent on hearing that what is this strange looking creature and what he is trying to talk to me. So Ravan looked at him and he was saying that where all your education and erudition have evaporated, why are you engaging in such a lowly thing? And then he asks, what would be your reaction if somebody does the same to Mandodari? Will you be happy? And then he started telling, Jatayu was talking to Ravan, and he's saying that just as the nutritious food cannot be digested by a person who does not have proper digestion, similarly, my good advice is not reaching you, but I want to warn you that you are actually drinking poison. You are actually drinking poison by taking Sita, because once Ravan comes, he'll put a noose around your nose and he'll drag you. He'll bring you down. Once Rama comes, he will drag you there. So he was warning, and he then started asking that why are you stealing Rama's wife? What wrong has he caused you? And he said, if you are doing this because he has killed Khar and Dushan, then you should know for sure that the only person who has to be blamed is your sister Surpanakha, because she went around sticking out his nose in different directions at wrong place, and she deserved what treatment was given to her. So Jatayu was trying to put some sense in Ravana's head. He was telling that like how you are taking Sita along with you, you are actually not taking Sita. You are actually taking a venomous serpent with you, and you have no idea how you can handle her, because you cannot handle her, because this is Sita and Rama would definitely come to protect. So now here we see that there is huge difference between Ravan and Jatayu. So we know that Ravan is comparatively much younger and Jatayu is old. Ravan is robust, he is strong, and Jatayu is feeble. Ravan is armed, he is in his own chariot and he has lot of weapons, and Jatayu is weaponless. Ravan is inside his chariot completely protected, and Jatayu, where is Jatayu? He is in the open sky, flying in the open sky unprotected. But interestingly we see that Ravan at this point is fearful and Jatayu is fearless. So though we see that all the positives are there in Ravana's favor, yet Ravan is fearful and Jatayu is fearless. Why was it so? Because Ravan, what he was doing was against the will of Supreme Lord, and what Jatayu was doing was serving the Supreme Lord. So that is how when we take shelter of the Supreme Lord, then automatically we become fearless. And as a result, we know how Ravan has been vilified for generations till this time, and till the time immemorial he would be vilified, and how Jatayu is glorified. So here is our first life lesson for today. Ultimate glory comes by serving the most glorious. So how Jatayu became glorious is because he was serving one who was most glorious. So there is where we become glorious, if we start serving the Supreme Lord. So continuing further with our discussion. So now again, so the talk was going on, the conversation was going on, and Jatayu said that if you are brave, like how you claim to be brave, if you are brave, then don't do things what a petty thief does. Come in public, challenge Ram and Lakshman and take them. But then this is not fair what you are doing. And saying this, he finally started digging his claws into the umbrella. So Ravan was having this umbrella over his chariot, and he started digging him. He started stabbing Ravan, and the whole chariot began to vibrate. And it is described at this time Ravan was manifesting his 10-headed form. So all the 20 pairs of eyes, Ravana's 20 pairs of eyes were gazing at Jatayu. And what did Jatayu did? Jatayu swooped his wings, and in one shot he removed all the crowns from all the 10 heads of Ravanas. So zoop, with one swoop all the 10 crowns were gone, and Ravan was standing there, and he had not faced such an insult ever. Like, this was the first time that Ravan was insulted so badly, and Ravan's eyes started turning molten red, and he began to laugh hysterically, because he started laughing because he was thinking, now the time has come and I have to kill him. So he started thinking like that, but because there was no crown on his head, this vulture started pecking Ravana's uncovered head. And Jatayu snatched his bow. So Ravan took out his bow, and Jatayu snatches his bow and threw it outside the chariot. Then it is mentioned that Ravan what do we do with the missile? He shot 14 missiles. It is mentioned there that he shot 14 missiles at Jatayu, and Jatayu was still powerfully handling that. And then Ravan took out 100 arrows and shot those 100 arrows together, and Ravan was so surprised to see that, I mean, it was hurting Jatayu a little, but then he would just like flutter his wings again, and he would stretch out, though bleeding, yet he would be back attacking Ravan. So this is how Jatayu was attacking Ravan, and what he started doing is, now he started pulling out Ravana's arms. So he would pull out Ravana's arm and throw it. But then Jatayu was so confused when he noticed that the moment he would pull out one arm, the other arm would grow out. And then next and next. So he was ripping him off his arms, and these arms were continuously growing back. And that is why Jatayu became very confused and frustrated as what he is supposed to do, what he should be doing. So now again, so this whole fight continues for a long time, and Jatayu was breaking the things in his chariot one after the other, and Ravan was very frustrated, and he was hitting Jatayu hard. He was hitting Jatayu hard, and he was thinking that how can I destroy him completely. And at this point of time, Ravan started planning for something else because he was not able to defeat him. So here we have a life lesson, and then we will proceed further. I cannot do everything, but can I do something? Can I honestly and sincerely chip in my share of effort? So this is the lesson what we are learning from Jatayu. So we know that even before Jatayu started, he was aware that he would not be able to completely defeat Ravan. But then standing there, he was giving himself 100% shot. He was trying his level best. He was competing with Ravan as much as he could, despite his old age and despite all the limitations what he had, and still he was doing that. So can we do that thing? So we cannot change everything, we cannot do everything completely, but am I sincerely doing my bit of it? So that questions for all of us to ponder upon. So next, now by this time Ravan realized that this is no ordinary bird and there is no way to defeat him with his power. So Ravan thought, how I can defeat him is by my intelligence. So here, using his intelligence, as of now what Ravan did, first thing is he called for a Pushpak Viman, because his Viman or his current chariot in which he was flying was fully damaged by Jatayu. So he calls for Pushpak Viman. He immediately jumps on Pushpak Viman. Still he was holding Sita tight. He goes on there and then he says Jatayu. He tells Jatayu that okay, so every fighter has some weak point which he should carefully conceal from his enemy. So now I am sure that I have a weak point and you have a weak point. So let's share our weak points and then let us fight. So like this, he threw the next net for catching Jatayu. So he said, you tell me what is your weak point, I'll tell you my weak point. Because otherwise this battle is like endless. And now again Jatayu knew the rules that if somebody is challenging him during the fight, when the war is going on, and if somebody throws a challenge, then he's supposed to accept the challenge also. So he accepted the challenge graciously and he said, first you tell your weak point and then I'll tell you my weak point. So on this Ravan replies that my weak point is my toe. And then Jatayu said that my weak point is my wings, are my wings. So Ravan had pointed out towards his right toe and he said that is his weak point. So now Jatayu was supposed to reach Ravana's toe to attack him because that was his weak point. And for that he had to actually completely bend down, move forward and go down there. And again he calculated that whether it is worth taking a risk, but then he thought that that is probably the only way to stop it. So he takes that risk, he bends forward and he tries to attack Ravana's toe, and that is the time when Ravan brutally cuts off his wings, because he knew that that was the weak point. After cutting his wings, Ravan makes that point that Jatayu, you made a mistake. You trusted a Rakshasa. So actually it is told that Ravan did not disclose his weakness. He just, because he used his intelligence and he made him bend forward and simultaneously he got to know the weak point. So that is how actually he could not defeat Jatayu by fair means. So he adapted to this way and that is how he cut him off and he defeated. And this point also, when he was falling down, and that time it is mentioned that Sita actually embraced him lovingly, and Sita was feeling so sad for Jatayu, and Sita was remembering Maharaj Dashrath at this point because she knows that he is Dashrath's good friend. So she was remembering him and she could hear that now Jatayu was just quietly chanting Ram, 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 and Jatayu was falling down. So here we have our lessons. One, having faith and trust is virtuous, But before doing so, check where we are investing our faith. So Jatayu in this case, I mean, we saw how bravely he was fighting and how Ravan was fearful of him, and within his mind Ravan was sufficiently scared. But that at that one point where he put his faith on Ravan and disclosed his secret, and that changed the whole game. So we need to be very careful, where am I investing my faith in? So continuing further with the story or the pastime, in some time actually Ram and Lakshman arrived there, and Ram and Lakshman saw that Jatayu was lying down there, and Jatayu was chanting this Ram, Ram, Ram. So from a distance, first they were wondering, because the whole place was full of blood, and they were wondering, what is this thing, what is there? And then gradually when they come closer by, they could hear, Rama could hear his own name, and then he comes and he embraces Jatayu. And Jatayu tells him, so first thing what Jatayu tells him is that Ravan has kidnapped Sita. So see, Jatayu did what he was asked for. Sita requested him, so Jatayu gave that piece of information. And then he also tells him that because Ravan is a very great scholar, so what Ravan has done is, he had come to kidnap Sita in a particular Muhurat, which is known as Vinda Muhurat. And it is said that if anything valuable is lost during such time, Vinda Muhurat time, then it never comes back to the owner. But Jatayu said that by fighting, I have delayed the Muhurat, and the Muhurat has actually changed, and it was Punarvasu Muhurat when he actually kidnapped Sita Devi. And Punarvasu Muhurat, the good thing is that anything valuable, if it is lost during that time, it is a guarantee that it comes back to the owner. So by saying that, Jatayu said that Rama, please don't worry, Sita will come back to you. So Jatayu wanted to do more than what was expected out of him, but in the process he made sure that he did at least what was expected. So he delivered that message, he gave it completely, and what extra work he did is, he postponed the Muhurat. So now it was a guarantee that Sita Ma would come back to Ramchandra. And then it is mentioned that there is a description that long back, when Jatayu and Dashrath were friends in their younger age, so once actually Jatayu had saved the life of Dashrath, and Dashrath said, ask any benediction. And that time Jatayu had asked that I want to have your son. I want your son to be my son. So now this benediction, Dashrath also said, okay, yes. But that particular time actually neither Dashrath had any son nor was he married. So anyways, he gave off that benediction. Now what is happening here is that he had made that promise years ago. And now here we see that Lord Ramchandra actually performs the final rites, the Shraddh, the proper funeral for this bird Jatayu. So this promise what Dashrath had given, this was fulfilled much later by Ramchandra now. So it is so interesting that Lord Rama, one who could not do the final rites of his own father, just to fulfill the promise of his father which was given many years ago, he is doing the final rites for a vulture bird Jatayu. So Rama was not even aware of that promise. But then we are reminded in Ramayana that this is how Lord reciprocates to the desire of the devotee. So though he could not do for his own father, but he acted as a son for Jatayu, and he does this final rites for him. So there is one life lesson, that Lord reciprocates with each one of us in a very unique way. Everything in life is actually his unique reciprocation to our desires, attitude and efforts. So we have to be very careful of what we are desiring, what is our attitude and what are our actions, because Lord keeps reciprocating. We may not be even aware, but everything, whatever is happening in our life is perfect arrangement of the Lord, and it is a reciprocation from the Supreme Lord. And before we conclude this section, here is very interesting comparison between Maricha and Jatayu. So we know that Marichi came in the form of a golden deer. Marichi was sent by Ravan to distract Rama, and Marichi knew that Ram was the Supreme Lord, and he knew that if he goes there, he would be definitely killed by Rama. And he also knew that if he would not go there, then he would be killed by Ravan. So he thought for a while, and he decided that it is better to be killed by the hands of Lord Ramchandra than by getting killed by Ravana. So taking that as a point of view, he goes there. So Marichi goes there and he distracts Rama, and he calls out. So when Rama actually is hitting him, he calls out, "O Sita, O Lakshman," in the voice of Ramchandra. So now compare and contrast. So both of them, Marichi and Jatayu, both of them actually sacrificed their lives. Jatayu died at the hands of Ravan, whereas Marichi dies at the hand of Rama. Marichi died at the hands of Ram while serving Ravan, and Jatayu died at the hands of Ravan while serving Ramchandra. So Marichi maintained his loyalty to Ravan, though he knew that Rama is the Supreme Lord, yet till the very last moment he maintained his loyalty to Ravan. And breathing last his words, he was calling out for Sita and Lakshman, so that to create that confusion, so that Lakshman would rush there and Ravan can kidnap Sita. Jatayu's last words were, he was chanting Ram, Ram, Ram. So the question was Marichi. Now Marichi knew that he would die. Marichi was almost dying. Marichi knew that Rama is Supreme Lord. Now question arises, instead of Sita and Lakshman, why couldn't he chant Ram, Ram, Ram? Because all said and done, his loyalties were still with Ravan. And that is why we know that Jatayu became glorious and Marichi is vilified. So we do not mention about Marichi, we do not talk about, oh, how glorious his death was, because he lived his life and he died, he sacrificed his life serving Ravan. So this is the striking contrast between the two of them. And here we have a life lesson. Who is my master? Whom am I trying to please externally as well as internally? So these are few of the learnings from this life lesson. And before we go further and discuss the second slide, we have a special announcement for all of you. It is an important announcement. So as you know, Bhakti Yoga Made Easy, we have the last session, the concluding session next week. So there is just one more session left. And after that, we are coming up with something very, very exclusive for some of you. I'm not sure if it is everybody is how keen you are, but here we have a special course for you. So for all these sincere spiritual seekers, now we are changing our platform. We are coming up with personalized spiritual mentorship course. And here we'll be having Zoom interactive sessions. So rather than going live on YouTube, this particular program which we are launching in the first week of October, here we are coming up with personalized spiritual guidance and mentorship through the interactive sessions, and we will be taking these in small batches. So limited seats, first come first serve. So in the description box of this video you will find a link. So you have to click that link, and there are 4 options, 4 alternative slots are given. So you can choose a slot of your convenience and you can register for this course. So those of you who would register, only to your email IDs we will be sending you the registration link for this course. The Zoom details we would be sending you on your email IDs. So request those of you who are interested for having more personalized discussion, more of hand holding and actually translating all these things into the action points, more personalized guidance. So you are most welcome to join this. We would be starting this course on first week of October. So there are couple of batches on Saturday and couple of batches on Sunday. You have to choose only one batch out of these 4, whichever is convenient to you. You can choose those batch, and as we mentioned that it is limited seats, so first come first serve basis. So we will continue with the session, and we will going back to the live sessions.
Hare Krishna. So we saw that how Jatayu, a great personality, how he served Lord Ram even by giving up his own life. So Atma Samarpan. So he surrendered his entire self, his body, his mind, his words, the way he was actually trying to talk Ravan out of the wrong thing that he was doing. So he was using everything at his disposal to serve Lord Ram. So now we have another amazing example, and recently only we celebrated Onam. Now many of us may think that Onam is a festival for Kerala or for people from Kerala, but actually Onam is a very amazing festival, and we'll be talking about how this festival glorifies an amazing devotee. His name is Daityaraj Bali Maharaj, an amazing, big, huge devotee of the Lord, and he did amazing service. So that's what we're going to discuss now in a little bit of detail, and it's very exciting. So I'd like to take you maybe millions of years back, and there was a huge war between the Devatas and the Daityas, and they were fighting like anything. And in that war, Bali Maharaj was fighting, and Indra hit him with his thunderbolt, and he actually fell down from his chariot. So somehow the war was brought to a halt on the instructions of Brahma, and Narad Muni came and announced that we should stop the war. War was stopped, and Bali Maharaj was in a very precarious situation. So he was taken to a place where the Daitya Guru Shukracharya was there. So he used a special mantra and revived Bali Maharaj. So but because Bali Maharaj was revived by Shukracharya, he decided that he will dedicate his life to Shukracharya. So he became his disciple, and he served him very, very faithfully and very in a very loyal way. He served Shukracharya. So Bali Maharaj became a disciple of Shukracharya. So Bali Maharaj recovered, and many of the Daityas and the Rakshasas who were killed in that war, who still had their limbs and the head and the torso intact, so they were also revived. So once all that was done, because Bali Maharaj wanted to conquer the kingdom of Indra, so Shukracharya and those priests who come in the descendants of Bhrigu Muni, so they all got together and they engaged him in a sacrifice known as Vishwajit Yagya. By doing that, one can actually conquer over Indra. So they did that particular sacrifice. And as those actually we need to understand that at that time the priests, they had so much of purity, and they had so much of Brahma Tejas, that when they offered the oblations in the fire, in the yagya, there'll be so much of reciprocation there. So when they offered oblations in the yagya, a celestial chariot appeared. It had yellow horses like those of Indra. It had a flag marked with lion. And then from that same yagya appeared a golden bow, 2 quivers which had infallible arrows, a celestial armor. And then at that place of sacrifice, Bali Maharaj's grandfather also came. Who's Bali Maharaj's grandfather? If you remember, a very, very famous devotee whom we also discussed in one of the previous sessions, Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj is grandfather of Bali Maharaj. So Prahlad Maharaj also came to the venue of that sacrifice, and he gave a garland of flowers which would always remain fresh. They will never wilt. Now some of us have an example. We offer some flowers to the Lord, and the whole day the flowers wilt, and then we have to throw them off. But this was a garland which is made of ever fresh flowers. Shukracharya gave him a conch shell, and then Bali Maharaj got ready with that chariot, with that bow, with that quiver, with that armor to attack the capital of Indra. Indrapuri. So that's how he proceeded. So Indrapuri is actually the capital of the heavenly planets. So it is explained there that how there are very pleasing gardens, and there are trees which have branches which are really bent. Why? Because there are so many flowers and fruits, and there are very beautiful women who are sporting in those gardens. And in fact, these women are such that their beauty is everlasting. They never become old. They always remain youthful. We don't find such women on earth. And in fact, they will glitter like flames of fire. And when the breeze will flow, they had such fragrant flowers in their hair that the whole breeze will become very fragrant. And this place, Indrapuri, had wide roads. It had many assembly houses, and the crossroads were made of pearls. The benches were made of diamonds and coral. And I've read something very amazing. There were 100 million airplanes. 100 million airplanes. So those airplanes would be flying. So like we have so many motorbikes, cycles, cars, trucks, so many things people go here and there. It seems there people take the airways. So everybody almost had an aircraft, so they would fly over. And this aircraft was not like the ones that we have, that it's all fully locked up. You have to sit inside, put safety belt, and then you fly. You cannot really see much outside. Outsiders cannot see who's inside the plane. In fact, these planes would fly, and those women, those beautiful, gorgeous, heavenly women who will fly in that, they will sing, they will chant, and those sounds were also audible. Those auspicious songs that they would be chanting, so they would be audible. So that was the part of the music. There will be cries of the peacock, there will be flute music, stringed instruments and drums. So it was a very, very pleasant experience. The sound, the smell, the vision, everything was very, very soothing and very beautiful. And this is one place, the heavenly planet, especially Indrapuri, is a place where the sinful, envious people cannot go. People who are violent against other living entities, who are very cunning, who are falsely proud, who are lusty, who are greedy, they cannot gain an entrance in the Indrapuri, or the palace, or the capital city of the heavenly planets. So Bali Maharaj had reached the outskirts of this city, and he blew the mighty conch given by Shukracharya. So when Indra and other devatas, they heard Bali Maharaj approach, and they heard that conch, they realized that they cannot match the strength of Bali. So what they did, what to do. A person will become very perplexed if the enemy is right outside his door. He'll become very perplexed. We have this example of China, creating trouble in recent times. So everybody becomes a little anxious. So what did Indra and others did? They approached their spiritual master. They approached Brihaspati, and they inquired, Bali has acquired so much of prowess, and we cannot counter him. What is the cause? So Brihaspati explained. He said, the descendants of Bhrigu Muni are very pleased with Bali, and they have blessed him with their Brahma Tejas, and they cannot be conquered now. Nobody can defeat them. You cannot defeat them. Who can defeat? The Supreme Personality of Godhead. Supreme Lord only can come and defeat. So what options do you have? So Brihaspati said, the only option that you have is that you leave the heavenly planets. You go away. You go away unseen. Take a form of your choice. Go somewhere. Go away from here and wait for the time to change. When the time changes, situation can be reversed. A time will come when Bali Maharaj will offend a Brahmana, and then all this will go away from him. So imagine Devatas had to leave their place of residence. They had to give up their fame, but they still listened to their spiritual master. So they went away from the heavenly planets. There was no fight. There was no war with Bali Maharaj. So they just went away, and Bali Maharaj entered Indrapuri. And that is how Bali Maharaj took control of all the three worlds. And then, because the post of Indra, there is a process by which one can achieve the post of Indra, and that is by performing 100 Ashwamedh Yagya. So Shukracharya and the descendants of Bhrigu Muni, they arranged for 100 Ashwamedh Yagya so that Bali Maharaj can continue in the post of Indra. So that's how Bali Maharaj shone brilliantly like the full moon in night. That is how he beautifully shone on the throne of Indra. So this was going on. Before we go further, it's a very nice life lesson for all of us, because this situation will, either it has already come in our lives or will come in future. So it is important for us to reflect on this. What is the real positive outlook? Indra and all of them, they knew that Bali has come and they have to leave all that they had. And they were still positive in that. So what is that positive outlook? When faced with unsurmountable odds, take guidance from qualified superiors rather than being frustrated and depressed. So right now we'll see in our lives, this is what is really missing. We really don't have qualified superiors who can guide us in the moments of crisis. So we really don't know whether we should do this or we should do that, and the result is that we are very frustrated and we are very depressed. So this is something how we can actually have a positive outlook with the help of qualified, well-educated, trained, spiritually enlightened superiors who can guide us at different points in our life, in different crises. So the Devatas had been driven away, and the mother of Devatas, Aditi, was very distressed because they were all his children and they had to run away from their home. So she was very distressed. She waited for her husband who was doing tapasya. So when Kashyapa Muni came back, Aditi said, see, both the Devatas and the demons, the demigods and the demons are your children. They have come from you, and therefore you are equal to both of them. But Supreme Lord favors the devotees. He favors the Devatas. So you also please favor the Devatas. They are deprived of their residence. They are deprived of their opulence by their enemy demons. Please do something. Please help them. So this is what Aditi prayed to her husband. So what did Kashyapa Muni did first? What is the first thing which he told his wife? He said, this is all because of the illusory potency of the Lord. Maya Shakti of the Lord. Because you think you are the body, and whomever you see the body. So you think so and so person is your husband, so and so person is your son, and that is why you are lamenting for so many things. So that is, this was the first instruction Kashyapa Muni was giving, that you are not this body, you are spirit soul. Why are you lamenting for the body? So this is the spiritual instruction which Kashyapa Muni gave to Aditi. But Aditi was not in a position to accept that spiritual instruction, that spiritual knowledge, that I should be equipoised in the face of loss or gain. This is what he was giving, but she could not take this instruction. So okay, Kashyapa Muni said, okay, no problem. So you want to subdue your enemies. You want to bestow all auspicious benedictions. You want to fulfill your desire. You want your children the Devatas to get back what they have lost from the demons. Okay, what you have to do? You have to perform devotional service to Supreme Lord. Otherwise, there is no other method. Everything else is waste of time. All you have to do is just please the Supreme Lord, perform devotional service. So this is what he said. So here we see the nature of Aditi. There are four kinds of people who approach the Lord. One who approaches out of great longing and desire. One who approaches in distress. One who approaches who is jigyasu, who wants to know more. And one who is jnani. So these are the four kinds of people Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita who approach him. So here we see that Aditi is the one who is approaching the Lord in great distress. Right? And in fact, Krishna further explains that pure devotees are beyond these four types of personalities. Although these four personalities are Mahatma, they are Mahatma because in their distress or in their desire, whom they are approaching the Supreme Lord. So they are Mahatma. But pure devotees are beyond this. So this was the first instruction of Kashyapa Muni. And when he saw that his wife is not comfortable with that, so he said, no problem. You want to fulfill your desire? Worship the Supreme Lord and your desires will be fulfilled. So then what did Kashyapa Muni did? He explained a particular vrata to please the Lord. And what was that vrata? No, it was not his own conception, because he had heard about that vrata from his father, from Brahma. So he said, I have heard this from Brahma and I am going to tell you about the same thing to you. So you also perform that vrata. That vrata is called Payo Vrata. So that is performed for 12 days, in which only milk is drunk and there is elaborate deity worship and serving Vaishnava devotees, singing and chanting prayers, and especially reciting Srimad Bhagavatam. So it is described in Srimad Bhagavatam great detail how Kashyapa Muni has explained this entire vrata to Aditi. And before we go ahead and see what Aditi did, we have a life lesson. What is that? One very attached to own body and those of others cannot appreciate true nature, cannot appreciate our true nature, that is soul. So that is very logical. Because when we think we are the body, when we think others are their body, so we are not much concerned about the soul. So this knowledge, we are not able to understand this knowledge that we are not this body, we are spirit soul. And also another life lesson, whether one wants liberation or anything material, it is better to worship Supreme Lord than anyone else. So this is what Kashyapa Muni was saying, that anything else, any other process is all only waste of time. So this is very important for us. We should remember this, whether we want to advance in spiritual life or even if we have some material desire, it is better to worship the Supreme Lord only and not anybody else. And then we have one more life lesson. So there is a series of 3 life lessons, and the third one is, worship should be done as instructed in Guru Parampara and not whimsically. So here Aditi took up the process of worshipping the Supreme Lord as instructed by her husband, who heard from his father and spiritual master. So this is very important for us to know. So it is not that simply we do something what we think is right, or somebody told that it should be done. No, you verify and do what is the right thing to do. Otherwise, the Lord will not be pleased. So Aditi performed Payo Vrata, and she performed that Vrata with undivided attention. And the result, Lord became very pleased. He appeared just in 12 days of Vrata. Lord appeared in his 4-handed form. Beautiful 4-handed form Lord appeared. And when Aditi saw this beautiful form of the Lord, she became very ecstatic. She offered her obeisances, she glorified the Lord, she highlighted that her desire to vanquish her enemies was actually a very petty desire. Because she had the darshan of the Lord, she had that realization that for what she was praying to the Lord, that's a very petty thing to pray to the Supreme Lord. Anyways, Lord saw and Lord heard, and then Lord said, I already know about your desire. Lord said, I already know about your desire, but demons are unconquerable now because they are under the protection of the Brahmana, so they cannot be conquered. So I should think of something else to favor you. I should think of some other means to fulfill your desire. Because you have worshipped me, so you will definitely get the result. So this is another amazing point. So Lord said, because you prayed to me, you performed this vrata very perfectly, and because your husband Kashyapa Muni has performed so many austerities, I, Supreme Lord, will become your son. I will appear as your son. So this is the result that Lord gave, that I myself will come as your son. So Lord appeared from Aditi's womb, in due course of time. Lord, of course, first entered Kashyapa Muni, and then from Kashyapa Muni he entered the womb of Aditi. And when the time came for the Lord to appear from Aditi's womb, can you imagine? Lord appeared in the 4-handed form. He appeared with his conch, with his club, lotus, the Sudarshan Chakra, the disc. He was already wearing yellow garments. His eyes were beautiful, like petals of blossoming lotus. His complexion was blackish. He was decorated with ornaments. His chest had Srivatsa mark and a beautiful flower garland. So this is how Lord appeared from the womb of Aditi. So they, both the parents were very delighted. Kashyapa Muni was saying, Jai, Jai, Jai. And they were very happy to see the Lord taken birth as their own child. So we have a life lesson here. When we have a chance, ask for the highest benediction, eternal service to Lord. So you see that how the entire vrata was done by Aditi, and she had a desire to vanquish the enemies of his children. This is what she ended up asking. But when we pray, when we do any vrata, when we perform Ekadashi vrata, when we chant the holy names, the only thing that we should be asking for is the highest benediction that Lord can give, and that is eternal service to the Supreme Lord for this birth and for the next and for all the births to come. So this is the best thing that we can ask for the Lord. And we have one more life lesson. Lord's sincere worship never goes in vain. It always bears fruit. So we saw that Lord himself said that at this point in time, Bali Maharaj cannot be removed from that position because for whatever reasons. But I will find some other way and fulfill your desire. So if we worship the Lord, Lord will find some way to help us out. So therefore Lord's worship never goes in vain. Sometimes, there are people who pray to the Lord, who come to temple and they pray to Lord Krishna, and sometimes they may say, I prayed, nothing happened. Arey Baba, it is not possible that nothing happened. Something has happened, we are not able to perceive. Lord's worship never goes in vain. So Lord had appeared from Aditi's womb. He was having ornament, Srivatsa mark, blackish complexion, Shankha Chakra Gada Padma, and yellow garments, and all this, this is how Lord appeared with all the ornaments. And then in front of Aditi and Kashyapa, he transformed into a dwarf Brahmana Brahmachari, Vamandev. So the Lord transformed himself into Vamandev. So Vamandev Bhagavan ki Jai. So Vamandev had appeared. So of course, like for any child, they perform the birth ceremony, they perform the sacred thread ceremony, and great personalities had come for this. So sun god Suryadev came and gave Gayatri mantra. Brahaspati came and gave the sacred thread. Kashyapa, the father, gave the straw belt. So we see some of the pictures of Vamandev wearing a straw belt. So that was given by Kashyapa. Mother Earth gave deer skin. Moon god gave Brahma Danda. And Aditi gave a kopin. Deity presiding over the heaven gave umbrella. Brahma gave a water pot. You can see many of those things in this picture. Saptarishi gave Kushagras. Saraswati gave Rudraksh beads, so that is also Vamandev is wearing. Kuvera gave a pot for begging. And who gave the first donation to Vamandev was Mother Parvati, or the consort of Lord Shiva. So she was the one who gave the first donation to this small brahmachari, Brahmana Brahmachari. So this is how Vamandev was there. And then he immediately started off for the place where Bali Maharaj was having his great sacrifice. So Vamandev approached Narmada, the northern bank of Narmada, where the sacrifice was going on, and the priests there, they thought sun has arisen on the horizon. There was so much of effulgence from Vamandev, and because of so much effulgence coming from Vamandev, they felt that their own prowess has become nothing. So they immediately rose from their positions and they offered their obeisances to Vamandev. Bali Maharaj was very happy to see him. He offered him a seat and he washed his lotus feet, and he placed that water over his head. So this is what Bali Maharaj, that's how he welcomed. He said, I welcome you and I offer my most respectful obeisances to you. What we may do for you? This is what Bali Maharaj asked him. He's saying that because you came, all my dynasty has become sanctified. And because I drank the water that has washed your lotus feet, I have got freed from all the sinful reactions. And he said that it appears that you've come here asking for something. So what do you want? Do you want a cow? Do you want some gold, house, food, drink? Do you want a daughter of a Brahmana to be your wife? Or some villages, or some horse and elephants? Whatever you desire, you please let me know. So this is how Bali Maharaj was asking Vamandev. So I have a very beautiful verse here which talks about the glories of the water that has washed the feet of the Lord. It is called Charnamrit. So this is a very beautiful verse. It's from Gautama Tantra, which we chant while honoring the Tirtham. Akala mrityu haranam sarva vyadhi vinashanam Vishnu padodakam pitva sirasa dharyami aham. What is it? After drinking Sri Vishnu's Charnamrit, which prevents one from untimely death and destroys all kinds of distress, I hold it on my head. So when we get the Charnamrit of the Lord and we drink and we place it on our head, Akala mrityu haranam, so untimely death doesn't happen. Sarva vyadhi vinashanam, it destroys all kinds of diseases. So this is the benediction which one gets by honoring the Charnamrit of the Lord. And this is what Bali Maharaj was saying, that all my sinful reactions have been destroyed by honoring this Charnamrit. So we saw Bali Maharaj glorified Vamandev. Vamandev on return glorified Bali Maharaj. He said that you are performing these sacrifices and taking guidance from Brahmana. Under a great devotee of the Lord, Prahlad Maharaj, you are undertaking the guidance of Prahlad Maharaj. And then he also said that your family and your dynasty are very charitable and they never go back on whatever they have promised. And he also talked about his great grandfather, Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha, and he was glorifying them for their prowess, and also his father Virochana. So we saw that Bali Maharaj appreciated the great devotee Prahlad Maharaj, who was his grandfather. Then he glorified his great grandfather and his father. So the entire family Vamandev had glorified. And then Vamandev presented his request, because Bali Maharaj had asked, how can I serve you? So Vamandev asked, I want 3 steps of land by my measurement. So this is my request. And I do not wish to accept anything more. This is what I require and this is what I am asking. So this is what Vamandev asked. So this brings us to a very important principle. And what is that principle? The highest principle of sustenance and freedom for sin. Do not aspire for more than the needs. So whatever our needs are, restrict our desires to just fulfilling those needs. If we go beyond our needs, then of course we will transgress the principles and somewhere or the other will commit sin, and we will never be satisfied. So Bali Maharaj, when he heard this, that this small Brahmana boy, Brahmachari, wants only 3 steps of land by his measurement, he said, your speech is good, mere boy, but you are only a small boy. Your intelligence is not much developed. You are not very prudent, very intelligent with respect to your self-interest. I am the proprietor of the 3 worlds. This Bhumandala has 7 islands and I can give one of the islands to you. So you don't seem to be very intelligent. This is what Bali Maharaj was telling Vamandev. So Vamandev, in fact, Bali Maharaj was saying, after having begged from me charity, you should ask whatever you need so that you don't have to ask again anyone ever. That is how you should ask me. So Bali Maharaj was very charitable, and that's how he asked that you should ask me so that you don't have to ask anyone for anything again. So this is what Bali Maharaj said. So Vamandev said, very important, Vamandev said, if person's senses are uncontrolled, then even if he receives the whole universe, he will be dissatisfied because his senses are not controlled. So he said, if I am not satisfied with these 3 paces of land, these 3 steps of land, then even if you give me one island of Bhumandala, I will not be satisfied. I'd be thinking that I need the other one. I need all these 6. I need all these 7 islands. So this is how one may be thinking. So that's what Vamandev replied to Bali Maharaj. It's a great point of wisdom. So Bali Maharaj, so we will go to this these life lesson, and this is very important for all of us. Actually, this is important for those who want to be happy and who want to be satisfied. Who want to be always unhappy, they can cover their camera, phone, and they not see this. So what is the life lesson? Uncontrolled senses lead to dissatisfaction. A person is dissatisfied with whatever one receives, and it leads to repetition of birth and death. I repeat, uncontrolled senses. If my senses are not under my control, then I will always be dissatisfied, and with whatever I'll get, I will not be satisfied. So dissatisfied with whatever one receives, and it will lead to repetition of birth and death. And what is the opposite of this? Satisfied with whatever achieved as a result of his destiny. So whatever I receive, I understand that is the result of my previous karmic reactions, and I must accept it as my destiny. That person would always be happy. He will never be dissatisfied, and he's a fit candidate for liberation. Because our business is not in this material world. We have to go out. So that's why he is the best person. He is fit for liberation. So when this conversation was going on between Bali Maharaj and Vaman Dev, ultimately Bali Maharaj said, okay, whatever you want, how much ever you require, I will give you. So this is what statement Bali Maharaj said. At that time, Shukracharya realized. He realized Vaman Dev's purpose. He understood that, oh, he is Vishnu, he is the son of Aditi and Kashyapa, and he has come here to fulfill the interest of the Devatas. And he has actually covered himself up. He has come falsely as a brahmachari. Actually, but he is Vishnu. And then he started explaining he took Bali Maharaj, and he was telling him, actually, he will take away your land, he will take away your wealth, your beauty, your power, and your fame. Actually, you are going to give your kingdom to your enemy. And actually, he became angry. Shukracharya became angry at Bali Maharaj. You are going to make a big mistake. You have told him that you will give him 3 steps of land. In fact, with his just first 2 steps, he will take the entire world, and you will not be able to give him anything to keep. And his 3rd step, and then you will have nothing left. So you cannot lead your livelihood, and you will not be able to fulfill your promise, and therefore you will go to hell. So this is what Shukracharya is telling Bali Maharaj. And after that, he gives many other reasons that on what ground you can reject, and you can tell Vaman Dev, I will not give you this charity, even if you have to tell a lie. So this is how Shukracharya is trying to convince Bali Maharaj. Actually, Shukracharya is those kind of spiritual master and that kind of a guru and that kind of a priest who live on income received from their disciples. So actually, Shukracharya was thinking, ki now in this situation, Bali Maharaj will give everything, Vishnu will take everything. What will happen to me? Where will I get my remuneration from? How will I live? This is what Shukracharya was thinking. In fact, so it's a sharp contrast with a Vaishnava guru. Who's a Vaishnava? Vaishnava always thinks of serving the Supreme Lord and engaging everybody else in the service of the Lord. So that's where the huge difference comes between Shukracharya and that kind of teachers and a Vaishnava guru. So Bali Maharaj very carefully he thought and he considered what I should do. My spiritual master is saying I should not give this charity. So so what should I do? Should I follow my spiritual master? And then he realized my spiritual master is telling me not to serve Vishnu, not to surrender to the Supreme Lord, and without surrendering to Supreme Lord, I cannot go back to the spiritual world. So therefore my spiritual master is giving me wrong advice, and therefore I must reject my spiritual master, and it is better that I serve the Supreme Lord. So therefore Bali Maharaj decided that he will reject his guru and he will serve Vaman Dev. So Bali Maharaj was saying, you are asking me to withdraw my promise out of greed for my land and for my property and behave like an ordinary cheater? You want me to become a liar? Actually, Mother Earth cannot take the load of a person who is a liar. And anyways, Bali Maharaj was saying, anyways, when I will die, all of this position I am going to leave behind and I will go somewhere else. So what better opportunity can come that I can give all my possessions directly to the Supreme Lord? If Vaman Dev is Supreme Lord, I am going to give everything to him. What is better? What better thing can I do in my life? So this is how Bali Maharaj was so convinced that I must satisfy Supreme Lord. Whether he is my enemy, whether he is what, he is Supreme Lord and I must satisfy him. So this is how Bali Maharaj was thinking. So we need to understand that Bali Maharaj had received so much of blessings of his grandfather Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad Maharaj was a great devotee and Bali Maharaj received his Kripa Siddhi from Prahlad Maharaj and received so much of blessings. That's how his devotion had blossomed. And Vaman Dev, Supreme Lord, saw that my devotee Bali Maharaj has become such a nice devotee, and that is why he came to the sacrificial arena to meet his devotee. So Shukracharya decided, when Shukracharya saw that Bali Maharaj had decided to give, Shukracharya became very angry and he said, you are going to disobey my order, you are my disciple and you are going to disobey me, I will curse you, that you shall very soon be bereft of all your opulence. So Bali Maharaj said, whatever, he did not deviate. So he gave the water to Vaman Dev and with that he gave the gift of land as promised. So Devatas were very amazed with the sacrifice of Bali Maharaj. They were glorifying Bali Maharaj, that how he had practically the entire universe at his disposal, and he gave everything off to Vaman Dev, knowing that he is representing his enemies, the Devatas. And now we will go. So we may feel that, Bali Maharaj had given so much of, has done so much of sacrifice. He lost everything. In fact, he was arrested. He was arrested by Garuda. He was arrested on the behalf of Vaman Dev because Vaman Dev, he took first step and the lower planetary systems were covered. He took the second step. The higher planets were taken. Beyond Satya Loka, Brahma Loka was covered and his feet crushed and touched the shell of the universe, and from there that celestial Ganga came in. So in 2 steps he covered the entire universe. Where to keep the third step, because he could not offer. So Bali Maharaj was arrested. Bali Maharaj said, Lord, nothing else is there, my head is there, you place your third step on my head. So it is explained that actually Bali Maharaj was such a great devotee. If he would have directly come and asked Bali that I want the entire 3 worlds from you, Bali Maharaj would have given. So why did Lord directly did not come and came as a dwarf brahmachari and asked for for all this Leela to happen? Because he wanted to enjoy this Leela with Bali Maharaj. One, and second, he wanted the whole world to know the glories of his devotee. So Bali Maharaj, he lost everything. But then Vaman Dev glorified his tolerance and his truthfulness and his devotion. And then he said, Bali, I am going to give you a place which is superior to Devatas. I am going to give you a place, Sutala, which is constructed by Vishwakarma according to my order. And in next Manvantar, you will get the position of Indra. And this place that I made for you in Sutala Loka, my personal weapon Sudarshan Chakra will protect you. Nobody can come and attack, and if anybody comes, Sudarshan Chakra will kill them. And he said, I will personally reside as a doorman, and anybody who resides in your place in Sutala Loka, he will not have any mental problems, he will not have any physical problems, he will not feel any fatigue, no dizziness, no corona, no defeat, no natural calamities. So this is the benediction that Vaman Dev had given to Bali Maharaj. So imagine Bali Maharaj one way lost everything, but by surrendering to the Supreme Lord, nobody is a loser. In fact, one is greater, one gains greater than one's imagination. So this is so wonderfully signified and exemplified by the behavior of Bali Maharaj and Vaman Dev. So very, very sweet and wonderful pastime. So before we just conclude the session,
on Atma Nivedanam, we will repeat this announcement again, that we are starting this personalized spiritual mentorship program. So those of you who are interested, in the description box you will find the link wherein you have to click and you have to fill in your details. And as it is for limited seats only, so it is like first come first serve basis, and these are the personalized training sessions which would no longer be happening on YouTube, but through Zoom classroom we will be teaching you, and we will be hand holding you and connecting with you on a personal level and proceeding further from this point onwards. But not to forget, we have our final class of BYME in the next week. So before we call off for the day, here is the overview of the chapters we covered today. So we saw essentially the 6 symptoms of surrender, and we also saw the degrees of surrender based on alignment with the mood and who is in the center of the orbit. So looking forward to meet all of you for the question answer session tomorrow evening from 5 to 6. The question answer link is also there in the description box, so any question, kindly shoot us and we'll be more than happy to answer your questions tomorrow.
In fact, these question answer sessions are very, very interesting. I'm sure we find them very interesting, and I'm sure if you attend, you'll also find them very interesting.
So we'll take your leave. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna.